Hello and welcome to the Brubacher and Beyond podcast, where we are shaping the world we live in so more people can find the construction industry uncommonly refreshing. Hello everybody, today we have a special guest in studio. We are recording in our headquarters in one of our new renovated offices. You'll see the pictures when we post them online. I will say, if you do see us online, please like us, share us. If you don't like us, tell us why you don't like us, and AJ and I will try to do a better job. Hopefully this is a little bit clearer too. We got some new equipment we're testing out, so
absolutely.
We are on the rise, AJ.
Absolutely. And you know, this is a very important month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I know for many years, mental health has been like a stigma in just society in general and in a lot of industries, and especially the construction industry as well. And this episode, we want to explore the overlooked role of that in the workplace, again, especially with the construction industry. So with us today, we have a very special guest. We have Kim McDevitt, the Executive Director of Mental Health America of Lancaster County. Kim, welcome aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so tell us about your journey into mental health advocacy.
I wanted to be a school psychologist when I was younger, right? I always thought I'd do that when I was in high school, middle school. And then I shifted gears a little bit, and it wasn't until probably like 10 years ago that I realized, gosh, everything comes back to mental health. And I've been in the nonprofit world my entire career in leadership in the past 20 some years. But everything ties back to mental health. And so when I had this opportunity to lead Mental Health America, I believe in the work, and I'm fascinated by human behavior.
So how did you get that server mindset?
I think I'm a big relationship person, and I'm a compassionate, caring individual, but I've also grown up being raised by business owners, and so I have that business acumen. So I think my leadership has led me into like executive leadership for nonprofits, and I'm a very solution-driven person, and I really want to make a difference, and I've done that. I mean, even when I was younger, I volunteered, even when volunteering was not a thing. So I think, I don't know, it's just ingrained in me.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I came to the U.S. when I was 7, and so I saw how hard my parents worked. We did grow up in that pick yourself up by your bootstraps type of mentality, but there were people who were struggling, and I think my dad was always a helper. Even when he owned his businesses, he was always giving. We always kind of laughed about him giving away all his profits. So that's how I was raised, and I had great role models.
Absolutely. And just with those experiences, I know when it comes to dealing with the stigma of mental health, you know, why do you think it's hard for many people to talk about mental health at work or in their daily lives?
I think the stigma comes from the lack of education and awareness, acknowledging or recognizing signs and symptoms, and really normalizing the conversation. I think we're just, especially in your industry, right? That's a male-dominated industry. There's the macho, tough guy type of mentality, yet suicides are the highest in middle-aged white males. And so, and again, because they're not talking, they don't have those relationships. Women tend to talk to each other. We have the support groups. And men just, they feel like they need to toughen up and not express how they're feeling. Or if they are experiencing symptoms, they might not recognize them as depression or anxiety. I can share a couple of different situations where one in particular, there was a CEO I was talking to, and he said, I just didn't want to get out of bed, and I just thought I was tired. I was fatigued. I'm running this company, and he said, but it was just, I kept experiencing this day in and day out, and I really thought I was physically ill. Something was going on. I went to my doctor, and the doctor talked through some things with me, and I realized I was struggling with depression. And so I got on a low dosage of medication, and I'm feeling so much better. And he's like, I had no idea. And I'm not here to promote medication, but for that particular person, they were experiencing the brain disease, a mental illness. And so, again, they had no idea. And we hear that often.
Yeah, there's some statistics out there that unfortunately more people die of suicide than other parts of the construction industry. And like you said, it's a male-dominated industry. I can say we do safety talks in the morning. We try to do huddles. We try to get the guys together in groups. But I do think that, sometimes you come to work with things on your mind.
Yeah.
Talk about it in the workplace, right? Because you don't know, because again, that stigma, I think a lot of folks are afraid that they might be judged or they might affect how they're seen. Can I take on a leadership role if I struggle with anxiety or if I struggle with depression, right? So in number 2 of industry groups with the highest rates of suicide is the construction business.
Yeah.
And what's the next one?
So the number 1 industry here with the highest suicide rate is actually mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction. Again, has a high suicide rates, particularly among males. Construction would be at number 2, and then you have agriculture, and then transportation and warehousing. And that tells you a lot, again, with just the stigma of, people going in, wanting to do the work, but, with a lot on their minds. I mean, and you go in, it's like, oh, you don't really have anybody to talk to at that point.
You're opening the conversation, you're normalizing the conversation, and it comes from the top down, right? So if you're creating a culture of psychological safety, then more people will be talking.
So what are the signs that we should be looking for in the morning when we're huddling up and doing our stretch and flexes? And what should we be looking for from a coworker? Are there any specific signs that we should say, hey, this alarms us?
There are physical signs, performance, and social emotional signs, right? So physical signs are uncharacteristic behavior. And for males, it might come across as anger. So in males, when we see if a male is depressed or anxious, it'll come across as anger. That's kind of how it presents itself. Changes in sleeping or eating behaviors, either they're eating more or less. So you'll see weight gain or weight loss. Hygiene issues, someone who's not taking care of themselves. You'll see low levels in terms of performance. You'll see that they're not as excited, they're not as engaged in their work. Decreases in productivity, changes in work patterns, and increased absenteeism. Again, they're late, they can't get out of bed in the morning, or difficulty, and this is a big one, focusing and problem solving. They become forgetful or easily confused. And then disinterest in things, not only in the workplace, but outside the workplace, withdrawing from social situations, and fears and irrational paranoia, and then mood swings.
So, I mean, all of us have issues and problems or things that are going on at home or whatever. So what would your recommendation be how to deal with this?
So I think one of the things is, especially as a leader or a coworker, and we have lots of trainings about this that go into greater depth, but really paying attention and asking that person, are you okay? And not just saying, are you okay? And they say, yeah, I'm good, because we all say, oh yeah, I'm good, but no, really, are you okay? And I'm a little concerned, and this is why. So really giving them the opportunity, but like really being inquisitive and getting them to talk and making that time for them and checking in with them. So we hear that a lot, like checking in with someone every day if you know that someone might be struggling. I mean, rates of suicide are high in your industry, and so we can save lives. And I have a good example of a small business owner that came to one of it was Question, Persuade, Refer, which is our suicide prevention training. And he came, his church did it because they had 2 suicides in their faith community. And he attended, that training because he's like on the parish council and whatnot, but he's also a small business owner. So he attended that training, I think it was that weekend, and then a couple days later, he called me and he said, Kim, I had met him at the training, and he said, I just had one of my key employees resign. He said, he's been with me 13 years, and this was a blue-collar, position.
Yeah.
And he said, great guy, excited about his work, his future, with our company and all this. And he said, but I noticed lately he hasn't been doing well. Like, he's just been disengaged and all this stuff. And the fact that he resigned today, he said, I'm really concerned and I don't know what to do because I don't want to talk him into coming back to work or force him to. And I'm in a precarious position. And I said, well, let's, and I referred him to our advocates, one of my team members who, works more closely with this type of thing. And what they came up with, the employer came up with this, we didn't even suggest this, is he said, I want to keep him on our insurance plan. I said, I want him to get the help he needs.
Yeah.
I want to support him through this. Even though he's not my employee anymore, support him. He did that, and in the meantime, our advocates called his wife, the gentleman's wife, and talked with her. And yeah, he had a plan. And so in this, we ended up, the team and this employer ended up saving a life.
Wow.
And the employee is now back to working for this employer. But it's that recognition and it's scary, right? Because I've been in this, I do this every day, yet I don't know how to ask that question. It's very uncomfortable. But we do trainings and we do role play and all of that, so we make people comfortable with that.
What is the question we should be asking? Is, hey, are you okay?
Yeah.
Yes or no? But then really, like, if you have that, I'm going to call it that gut feeling that something's off, right? Usually your coworker's there every day, on time. You start noticing these things.
Are you thinking about hurting yourself? Is
the question.
Point blank, that if you ask someone that, it's going to suggest to them that they should, or it's going to put thoughts in their head, suggested thoughts in their head. That is not true. If someone is thinking about dying by suicide, they already have the thought in their mind. And just that one ask can save a life.
Okay.
Wow.
So let's just take it to the next step. I'm asked this question. They say yes.
Yeah.
What should I do?
Then immediately you can call us at Mental Health America and we can guide you through it. You can call Crisis Intervention and they can help. There's a suicide hotline, 988, which again, you don't want to be like over dramatic about it, right?
Yeah.
So, but just making sure that you connect them to resources. Being there is a supportive friend. So you can become a friend in that moment.
If someone is on the side of having these thoughts, and once they get better, are there things that they can do to stay positive, or?
Yeah, so we don't know. I mean, if you need someone to get better, it depends on the situation, and each one is unique.
Yeah.
But I think, especially employers, and this is also a myth, that you think that if you promote mental wellness in your industry or in your workplace, that it'll decrease productivity, right? Because people will just be more laid back, they'll use mental health as an excuse. That is a myth, right? So promoting mental health in your workplace, giving accommodations doesn't excuse people from behavior, or from performance rather. So you can still have, and we do this at Mental Health America, and I run a mental health organization, and I have, we have goals to meet, and we run it like a business. We're a nonprofit, but we have to run it like a business. And I still have performance expectations, right?
Yeah.
They're high at Mental Health America, but at the same time, everyone says that they feel psychologically safe, they feel supported, and I'll tell you, I have a really high-performing team as a result, because they're getting that support so they can take care of themselves and come back even stronger. So to answer your question, going back to your question, really supporting them through that and making sure they're connected to the resources that they need. So whether it's EAP, and I think only 48% of those in the workplace know what resources are available to them. So just making sure that's in your, newsletter, or you're talking about it at your huddles every once in a while, and just making sure people are aware that those resources and supports are available. One more thing I want to share is preventative. So going upstream and really preventive is key, because people are getting, either they're seeing therapists, or they're being proactive about their mental health and being, just once they recognize that they might be struggling, they might be taking steps to bettering themselves instead of waiting until it gets so acute or so severe that it moves beyond them.
Yeah, and I think that's important too. There was one time I was discussing with somebody, they were talking about, if you see someone in the river and you're going to help them, you're going to throw them a life-saving raft, right? But how long can you keep on just throwing that life-saving raft and see all these people
Downriver?
Yeah.
If you go upriver and see that there's a walking path and the guardrail is missing, and if you can fix that, how much energy would you save downriver? So as far as you can get upriver is the best possible. Are there a couple things that you can advise to us of how to stay upriver, like mentally? I mean, are there things that are recommended to keep your mental health in a good form?
Yeah, so I think, and mental health is very complex. The brain is very complex. So if we look at mental health in the same way we look at physical health, we know that, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
When I feel myself, if it's prolonged stress, and you know what, like some of us thrive in that high stress environment. We're driven in some way, and I see that with a lot of my team members. So I help them recognize when it's prolonged stress, and I do that for them as well. So I'm like, hey, you've been going at this pace for so long, so let's take a couple days off, right? Mm-hmm. So easing back and just recognizing within yourself what you need, having a balance. And some of us love working, right? So we feel like work is not,
Work is not work.
There is in that work. So making sure that you even force yourself to be out in nature, go for walks, engage with others. That's really big. Community is so important. We've been lacking that a little bit post-COVID. We're returning to it, but even the younger generation. So we really being in community with others is really important.
So you brought up that C word. And COVID.
Yeah.
So what have you seen coming through COVID, and what has changed coming out of it in your industry?
So one of the things that I am fortunate to do is have conversations with representatives in different sectors. So we see different things in different sectors, right? So in schools, I just presented to a school the other day, and the school counselors were asking me, they've seen a high acuity, which is the severity of mental health challenges. And I asked them, did you see this post-COVID? And they're like, it was happening pre-COVID, right? So, but then it exacerbated during COVID. And I think that heightened anxiety for those that were anxious to begin with prior to that, right? But really, COVID did bring a lot of anxiety. I think people were tied more to their phones. They got more addicted to technology during that time. But COVID also helped to reduce stigma like no other time in our history around mental health. So the other thing is, if you look at historically what's happened through pandemics, mental health was the last thing that was addressed post-pandemic. So it was like physical health was being addressed, basic needs were being addressed, mental health was the last. So we saw a rise in mental health challenges or people going to get support a couple years after COVID. And we expected that based on kind of historical knowledge.
So in a way, what happened with the pandemic exposed mental health as just a major problem. And also in this day and age with the internet and access to that information now, at a rapid rate, more people were able to see the problem. And now it's like, okay, now we know what the problem is. What do we do? I know somebody mentioned to me a long time ago, the first step toward change is awareness.
Right, awareness. Yep, and education. And it's so important. And I think that's what happened during COVID. Everybody started talking about mental health. And I think that we were able to learn more. Like you said, we had more exposure to it. We learned more, and now we know more. And so not everyone needs to be in therapy. That was one thing. Everybody jumped to therapy. And as we looked at the data, we realized, not everyone needs to be in therapy, but community is really, really important. And support groups and other things. And again, that's the other thing, is going for a jog might not solve, we have severe brain disease as well. That is a whole nother conversation.
No, the one main quote would be like when you go on out, it's like, go touch grass.
Yeah,
Basically, go touch grass. Just go out in nature, just lay out on the grass, and just think,
Yeah. That's it, taking time to just think, right? And allow yourself to, to clear your mind, because there's a lot of information coming to us now, more information than ever before.
So what are some things that you would suggest to other companies who are listening? How should they, from a small company to a large, if they don't have this integrated into their system, how should they start building a culture to support mental awareness?
Well,
mental health.
So just sharing a little bit of why this is important is 70% of employees said that employers are not doing enough, right? And psychological safety and work environment is so important. If someone feels safe in their work environment, they will not seek other jobs. And we know how difficult retention is, right? And recruitment. 38% of employees said they would feel comfortable going to their employer to ask for services in support of mental health. And only half, as I mentioned, know what services are available to them. So knowing that, it's providing information, providing education from the top down. It's got to be, and I can share some companies that are doing it well right now, but really creating a culture where you're supporting mental health. And it's not just putting something in. I mean, this is a great start. Oh my gosh, the fact that you guys are doing this. So the fact that Brewbacher's is doing this shows to your employees and the companies around that you are talking about mental health, you're supporting mental health.
Yeah, it's amazing how many things that everybody needs, or how many options there are in our company for support, and mental health is one of them.
We do have the employee assistance program here. We also have a chaplain as well, so people can talk to him. It's very confidential. So, and I have spoken to him when I came in, and he's mentioned that a lot of people have come in for confidential assistance. Absolutely.
And Larry is not an employee of Brewbacher. It's the Brewbacher family supports him, and there have been other companies heard about this in the local area and want his services. And Chaplain Larry, I had a conversation with him, and he's like, I'm supposed to be like semi-retired here, Chris. I find myself more busy because there's that much outreach.
Yeah.
If there's a crisis that's happening, you can call Chaplain Larry, and he will assist you in any way. Like, you don't have to think about it. So in the back of your mind, you have somebody there as a backup call.
Well, that's awesome. So yesterday we hosted a faith partnership breakfast. So we are trying to get faith communities to build support around mental health, to build mental health ministries within their faith communities, and to outreach. And this is why people feel safe with their chaplain, their pastors or priests. They feel safe with them. So that's so wise. Peer support's also someone with lived experience, having someone on team that can support someone that has lived experience.
And I gotta say, again, with mental health starting to be more at the forefront, we see a lot more initiatives, and not just from Brewbacher, not just from companies, but from all the nonprofits, especially like Mental Health America. I know other organizations just around Lancaster County alone. But with these initiatives, we want to know, what is the one big one that you are the most excited about for 2025?
So we're expanding Mental Health America. I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
That means we can serve a lot more people. We are expanding into Lebanon County, which is big. We've been in Lancaster County for 57 years. So the expansion is really been significant for us, again, serving more folks. We have expanded our programming, our partnerships. I mean, we've more than doubled our partnerships. We've tripled our team in the past 6 years and getting a lot more support from the community. A lot more. We're a nonprofit, so we depend on donations and community partners like yourselves to spread awareness. But our team is amazing. Like the folks that do this work are amazing, and they're being recognized in the community as experts. And so we're getting a lot more work. And so, yeah, that's what I'm most excited about. We've just completed our strategic plan, and I'm excited that for 2025 and 2026.
We're very excited as well, you know. And speaking of which, are there any upcoming events as well that our audience should know about?
One thing that we're asking again to reduce suicides is sharing crisis cards. So we have stacks of crisis cards that can notify us. We can get them to have in their workplace. Also, gifts of joy around Christmas time. We'd love for companies to help us with that as a creating a giving tree within your business. And we provide over 700 gifts. But we rely on businesses to give the gifts to the individuals throughout Lancaster County. The names are given to us by case managers. And then Extra Give, of course, is a nonprofit who doesn't participate in Extra Give. So having that support and just being involved, calling us when we recognize that someone might be struggling.
I will say one interesting thing is if you do go into our restrooms at Brubacher, you will find those cards in the restroom.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something that Chaplain Larry took the initiative to do, and he explained it because if you put the cards out in the middle where you can see them, maybe somebody take them. But if you're in the bathroom and you see the card, you can take the card.
But there are lots of workplaces, like WellSpan, just like the Mental Bell Seal Award for the workplace. They got platinum level for mental health in the workplace. Kegels just did a training. They're doing fundraisers for NHA. Again, they had employee family member suicide, so just really promoting mental health. Mantech, Dan Sod Recycling, they're huge on supporting mental health, and Dutchland too. So again, creating cultures of support.
So when you say partnerships with companies, what does that look like? Is that you guys come explain that to us?
So partnerships. So what we do is we go in and we provide a training to they're different trainings, right? So we could do it to leadership, or we could provide a training to employees, right? And then just being a referral source, so having your HR team use us as a referral source, so if they're struggling, supporting mental health. And it just, I mean, of course I would love the support to come to Mental Health America, but supporting a mental health organization speaks to your staff that you support the mission of mental health. And I think that's important. So we can work in partnership when you're recognizing someone might be struggling, you don't know, like that small business owner calling us. So we become your partner in mental health.
And that's really what you're looking for, partnerships, right?
Yeah.
Building those relationships, and very key in the business world.
That's the other thing we're doing, because a lot of your audience might be thinking, well, when I was growing up, and so we do, and the next generation may not be as resilient. So we're teaching that resiliency. It's okay to allow your students to struggle. It's okay to allow your employees to struggle a little bit. But, what's healthy stress and what's not healthy stress.
So it's getting away from that constant pressure, that pressure cooker every day for long periods of time.
Yep.
And trying to figure out what's best for the team.
Think about different companies and the culture and what keeps employees happy. Chick-fil-A is a good example. Everybody's happy there, right? Like it is, and they really focus on culture. They have lots of employees. They don't, they have a big support system.
You mentioned one thing that you guys do is role playing. I know Chick-fil-A does a lot of that.
Yeah.
And they actually will role play how to use a register and making sure they know it. So if you don't mind, how do you train your team, and how do you role play, and what are the
Yeah, so our team actually, a lot of our team members will move from, I mean, they don't just jump into an advocacy position. They have to have lots of experience. It is a little challenging because they're navigating systems, they're helping build supports for individuals. So the role play, we do a lot of support. I don't know that we do a lot of role playing in our training, but we try to, like, I just met with a new staff person this morning, and they were a little anxious about performing on a high performing team. Like they felt a little intimidated, and just sharing my own experiences of my struggles in performance. And I think, especially, like I said, top down, is being real. Just like being real with your employees and sharing your own personal struggles, because nobody gets where they are just out of the gate, right? So,
Right.
And giving grace and knowing, there was an experiment where they had two companies, and the company that like was the highest performing company, when they were asked how many mistakes, the one company said like employees weren't able to admit their mistakes, but in the highest performing company, they were able to admit it because they felt safe enough to share. And then you could find solutions around the mistakes that were happening.
You don't really see that in a lot of places, and you're starting to see that more and more.
The biggest struggle right now for employers is the younger generation, and understanding just the differences in how they see work, right? They might not want to work as long, right? They want that work-life balance. They might seemingly not have the grit, it just looks different, right, for them. So I think that's where the two generations kind of collide a little bit in trying to be patient with that younger generation and understand what their needs are. But they're high performers, they're fast performers. I mean, it's incredible how, and they think differently, but they're much more efficient in a lot of ways.
It's fascinating to see how the workplace has evolved over the last several decades, you know? I mean, what worked like, in the 70s or the 80s obviously does not work now, and it's just a matter of adaptability.
Right, yeah, that's so important, and it's important for the employer to realize. And again, just because you're making accommodations, and I'm going to share this again, it doesn't mean that you need to have, it doesn't excuse performance.
So keep high performance expectations. And it's
But in supporting that person, and you can balance that. And again, we have staff that trains how to do that.
So one thing I think though has changed from older generations, let's say the 80s, 70s now. I mean, people are talking a lot more, there's more communication, but it is different. So how do you stay ahead of that curve? How we talked about this, like staying proactive.
Okay.
How, do you just try things and then hope it works, or what is the method to staying ahead?
I'm like a social experiment at my house because I have 4 children. Okay, my oldest, 34, she high performer, B1 athlete. Like, we were so proud of her. I didn't know much about mental health then, right?
Yeah.
So she was like athletic scholar, graduated with honors, all this stuff, right? Well, she's really struggling right now. She's struggling because all that anxiety's built up. She just never addressed it. We didn't know, and my youngest two, my third son is in the trades. He went to the trades. He's in HVAC.
Okay.
And went through like a difficult time, and I'm like, talk to someone. He's like, and he went, and he's like, I work out, like I do all this stuff, like I feel like this is good for my brain. It's go. And then my last child got like a scholarship in Syracuse, like presidential, almost a full ride. And he's like, I'm not going there. He went to FSU, like just is getting into investment banking, has a job already, just graduated a couple weeks ago and is starting his new job in June and going to live in Tampa. And so, but they recognized what their needs were, and that's why they're healthy human beings. So just really getting ahead of the curve is just talking about it, educating, normalizing it. Like when my daughter was, growing up, I didn't know the symptoms of anxiety, and she's a highly anxious person, right? But I didn't recognize that when she was younger. So just making sure that people are.
So what are those symptoms?
So it's a lot of similar signs, like if they just, anxiety shows up in different ways. So they don't want to take risks, they're fearful. If you see them pulling back from socialization, if you see them, not performing to their abilities, might be a sign. So for the younger generation, I think that's where we're going upstream. You talked about the parable, is being able to teach these kids how to, when they're feeling anxious, what to do. So to de-escalate, to address, so deep breathing exercises, maybe not pushing themselves as hard in certain areas. So like when my daughter was growing up, like everybody was involved in multiple sports at each season, and we recognize that's not good for kids' mental health. The other thing is social media and technology. Pulling away from the screens is really important. But if a child is not able to regulate to their emotions, there's some dysregulation that happens. It's normal and natural, right? But when it seems like excessive, then I would make sure that you talk to someone or to make sure that you're addressing those early on, and being preventive and early intervention is key.
We talked about if we see someone in crisis, what to do. That's done.
And there's plenty of resources. We'll actually get a link for those in the show notes here. So wherever you get your podcast, we'll have that there. But I think at the end, everybody can agree that, mental health, it matters. Like whether you're at work, whether you're at home, wherever you're at, treating mental safety as physical safety. I know safety is one of the core values here at Brubacher, one of our 4 core values. And, you create space for conversation, you create space for compassion or for care. That's good for everybody at the end. Absolutely. And I truly appreciate that. And we truly appreciate having you here, Kim. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Brubacher and Beyond podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brubacher podcast today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our podcast so you can listen to new episodes every month. Share it with your friends in the industry and those who might like to learn more about the construction industry. Feel free to check us out on our website at www.brubacher.net. We hope you found the discussion insightful, and we look forward to the next time.